Bullying had been Hannah Mitchell's unwelcome companion since her family moved to Westlake 3 years ago, but nothing compared to the calculated cruelty that unfolded in the school cafeteria on that rainy Tuesday afternoon. The lunchroom buzzed with the usual chaotic energy. Basketball players holding court at their reserved table near the windows, theater kids rehearsing lines between bites, and scattered groups of students forming their protective social clusters. Hannah sat alone at the far corner table where she always did, a dog-eared copy of the bell jar, propped against her water bottle as she picked at her packed lunch, her long brown hair falling like a curtain to shield her face from unwanted attention. She didn't notice Tyler Jenkins and his friends whispering and snickering as they approached, their cafeteria trays loaded with the day's special spaghetti marinara, chocolate milk, and lime green jello. Hannah had learned to tune out the background noise of high school, having perfected the art of invisibility as a survival mechanism. The quiet girl, they called her, when they bothered to acknowledge her existence at all. Most days, teachers had to call her name twice during attendance because her whispered, "present," barely registered. Some speculated she might be mute, while others simply forgot she was there at all. "Hey, Hannah Banana!" Tyler's voice cut through her concentration, the nickname a mockery rather than a term of endearment. She looked up, startled by the direct address, a reflexive politeness compelling her to respond despite every instinct warning her to run. 6 pairs of eyes stared down at her, phones already raised in anticipation. Later, she would realize this had been planned, coordinated through group texts and Snapchats titled Operation Food Fight, with her unwitting casting as the star victim. "We noticed you always bring your own lunch," said Amber Collins, Tyler's girlfriend and captain of the cheer squad. "But that's so sad. You should really try the cafeteria special." Her saccharine tone dripped with false concern that wouldn't have fooled anyone, least of all Hannah, who had cataloged every intonation of insincerity directed her way since freshman year. Before Hannah could respond, Tyler tilted his tray, sending a cascade of lukewarm spaghetti sliding directly onto her open book and lap. The initial shock froze her in place as marinara sauce splattered across the table and down her white sweater, a Christmas gift from her grandmother that she treasured for its softness. The moment stretched like taffy, Hannah's mind struggling to process the deliberate act of cruelty while her body remained paralyzed. "Oops," Tyler said with exaggerated innocence, triggering Amber's high-pitched laughter. Then, as if following a choreographed routine, the others dumped their trays too. Chocolate milk soaking through her jeans, jello landing with a wet slap against her shoulder, more pasta sliding into her hair and down her back. The cafeteria fell silent for 3 heartbeats before erupting into chaos. Some gasped in genuine shock, others laughed nervously, uncomfortable witnesses to a line being crossed. A few looked away, their silence a form of complicity they would later regret. Mr. Delaney, the biology teacher on lunch duty, was occupied breaking up a card game in the far corner, unaware of the humiliation unfolding across the room. "Got it all?" Tyler asked his friend Marcus, who gave a thumbs up from behind his phone. "This is definitely going viral." The video, already being uploaded to 3 different social media platforms, would indeed collect thousands of views before the final bell rang. Hannah's humiliation transformed into entertainment for strangers who would never know her name. Something warm slid down Hannah's cheek, and she couldn't tell if it was tears or sauce. Her throat constricted around a scream that wouldn't come, years of practiced silence ensuring that even in this moment, she remained voiceless. Her hands trembled as she gathered her ruined book, sauce dripping from the pages containing Sylvia Plath's words that had been her only companions through lonely lunch periods. "Ah, she's crying," Amber Stage whispered, loud enough for surrounding tables to hear. "It's just a joke, Hannah. Don't be so sensitive." Those words finally broke the spell. Hannah stood, chair scraping against linoleum with a sound like a wounded animal. Pasta fell from her lap to the floor in clumps. She clutched her book to her chest, heedless of the sauce now staining her hands and forearms. With eyes downcast, she began the longest walk of her life, from her corner table to the cafeteria exit, each step accompanied by snickers, whispers, and the distinctive sound of phone cameras capturing her shame from multiple angles. Halfway to the door, her foot slipped on a puddle of milk, nearly sending her sprawling. She caught herself on a nearby table, leaving a smeared handprint of sauce that would remain there until the janitor's evening rounds, a scarlet reminder of what had transpired. The brief stumble elicited fresh laughter, crueler now with the bloodlust of an audience sensing weakness. Mr. Delaney finally noticed the commotion, making his way through the crowded tables with growing concern etched across his face. "What's going on here?" he demanded, taking in Hannah's sauce-covered appearance and the conspicuous empty trays in Tyler's group's hands. But Hannah couldn't bear another moment of public scrutiny. She pushed past the teacher with a mumbled "I'm fine" that convinced no one, leaving wet footprints down the hallway as she fled to the second-floor bathroom where no one went because of the perpetually flickering lights. There, locked in the farthest stall, she finally allowed herself to break down, silent sobs racking her body as she attempted to clean marinara sauce from the pages of the library book she'd now have to pay for. The bathroom door creaked open 10 minutes later. Hannah held her breath, pulling her feet up onto the toilet seat to avoid detection. "Hannah!" It was Ms. Patel, the school counselor. "The principal would like to see you. I've brought you some clothes from the lost and found." Her voice was gentle, lacking the pity Hannah dreaded. What happened today wasn't right. We're addressing it. But Hannah knew the truth. A detention for Tyler and his friends wouldn't undo the viral videos. No punishment would erase the memory of standing sauce-covered before her peers. The quiet girl had been broken in a way that administrative action couldn't fix, the final crack in a foundation weakened by years of isolation and indifference. That afternoon, she sat silently in Principal Warner's office, wearing oversized gym shorts and a faded school spirit shirt that smelled faintly of industrial detergent. While he explained how seriously they took bullying at Westlake High, she nodded mechanically when appropriate, signed the incident report without reading it, and declined his offer to call her parents. "They're both working," she explained, her first complete sentence since the incident. "I don't want to bother them." By the time Hannah walked home that day, the video had 2,347 views and 156 comments, many from students she passed in the hallway daily but who had never spoken a word to her. She read each one, methodically absorbing the casual cruelty of her peers while rainwater washed the last traces of sauce from her hair. Something was shifting inside her with each step toward home, each hateful comment, each remembered laugh. The quiet girl was disappearing, and in her place, someone new was emerging. Someone with an idea that would transform Westlake High School by this time tomorrow. The house was empty when Hannah arrived home, a small mercy that spared her from immediately explaining her borrowed clothes and haunted expression. She dropped her ruined backpack by the washing machine, salvaging what she could. A few notebooks with sauce-speckled edges, her graphing calculator miraculously protected by its case, and her phone, which had been in her pocket during the ambush. The sweater from her grandmother was beyond saving, the marinara having set into the delicate white fibers despite her attempts to rinse it in the school bathroom. Hannah stood under the shower until the hot water ran cold, watching swirls of pale red disappear down the drain. With each passing minute, the numbness that had carried her through the afternoon began to dissolve, giving way to something raw and unfamiliar. She had always processed bullying by turning inward, making herself smaller, quieter, less noticeable. A strategy that had clearly failed spectacularly today. Wrapped in her faded bathrobe, she sat cross-legged on her bed and reluctantly opened her phone. The notifications had multiplied. 27 new tags, 13 direct messages, and countless comments across platforms. The video had been shared far beyond Westlake's student body, reaching neighboring schools and even some alumni. Hannah forced herself to watch it from beginning to end, witnessing her own humiliation from the perspective of her tormentors. "They didn't even show the whole thing," she whispered to her empty room. The video had been carefully edited to remove the moments before the food dumping, cutting out Tyler's deliberate approach and taunting words. Without context, it appeared Hannah had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time, an unfortunate victim of a harmless prank rather than the target of calculated cruelty. Among the laughing emoji reactions and cruel comments, she found a few defenders, mostly strangers from other schools condemning the behavior. Not a single message of support had come from anyone at Westlake who had witnessed it firsthand. Even Eliza, who sat next to her in AP Literature and occasionally borrowed her notes, had liked the video. Something shifted in Hannah then, a fundamental realignment that straightened her hunched shoulders and dried her tears. 3 years of strategic invisibility had earned her nothing but the role of convenient target. The carefully constructed walls of silence that were meant to protect her had instead isolated her completely, leaving her without a single ally when she needed one most. "Enough," she said aloud, her voice sounding strange in the quiet room. It was the same word her father had used last year when announcing his departure from their family, spoken with finality and unexpected strength. Hannah hadn't understood then how someone could reach their breaking point so suddenly, but now the clarity was blinding. She pulled out her journal, the one place where her voice existed without apology, and began to write. Not the usual entries cataloging hurts and hopes, but something entirely new: names. Every person who had ever bullied her, ignored her when she needed help, witnessed her struggle and looked away. Next to each name, she added specific memories. Tyler tripping her in 7th grade, Amber spreading rumors about her family's financial problems after her father left, Marcus mimicking her quiet answers in chemistry until even the teacher laughed. The list grew to fill 3 pages, surprising her with its length. Were there really this many people complicit in her isolation? The realization should have crushed her, but instead, it ignited something defiant. If this many people had contributed to her pain, then this many people needed to understand its weight. Hannah reached for her craft supplies, remnants from a more hopeful time when she tried joining the scrapbooking club before Amber had made it clear she wasn't welcome. She selected heavy cardstock in various colors, her good pens, and began writing letters. Not accusations or angry manifestos, but honest reflections on how their actions or inactions had affected her. Each letter was different, personalized with specific incidents and observations, yet connected by a common thread of raw vulnerability that Hannah had never allowed herself to express. "Dear Tyler," she wrote on midnight blue paper, his letter among the hardest to compose. "Today wasn't the first time you chose me as a target, but I've decided it will be the last. Not because I'll be avoiding you, but because I'm no longer hiding. You've known me, or rather, seen me for 3 years, but I wonder if you know that I tutor your little brother in math every Tuesday at the library. He talks about you with such admiration. I wonder if he would admire the person I saw today in the cafeteria." She worked through the night, pausing only when her mother returned from her late shift at the hospital. Hannah listened to the familiar sounds of her mother microwaving dinner and watching 20 minutes of television before heading to bed, unaware of the transformation occurring in her daughter's bedroom. By dawn, Hannah had completed 43 letters, each sealed in an envelope with a name carefully printed on the front. Her hands were cramped, her eyes burning, but her mind was clearer than it had been in years. The quiet girl who had entered this room yesterday no longer existed. In her place was someone with a voice that demanded to be heard. As first light filtered through her curtains, Hannah made one final decision. She wouldn't just deliver these letters privately. That would allow the recipients to dismiss her words as they had always dismissed her presence. No, this needed to be public as her humiliation had been. The entire school would witness what happened when the quiet girl finally spoke. She packed the letters carefully in a decorative box left over from last Christmas, then laid out clothes she rarely wore. A bright yellow blouse her mother had bought, insisting the color suited her, and jeans without the familiar comfort of being oversized. For once, Hannah wanted to be seen, truly seen, before she delivered the message that would either change everything or confirm that Westlake High was exactly as cold as she feared. Her phone buzzed with a text from Principal Warner, informing her that Tyler and his friends would be serving 2 weeks of detention and offering her the option to stay home today until things settled down. Hannah smiled grimly at the inadequate response and typed back a simple reply, "I'll be there. There's something I need to do." The morning air held a crisp promise of change as Hannah walked through Westlake High's front doors, the decorative box clutched tightly against her chest like armor. She had arrived early, deliberately timing her entrance to avoid the usual crowded chaos of the main hallway. A few teachers nodded in her direction, their eyes holding a new awareness, a mixture of pity and guilt that Hannah neither wanted nor acknowledged. The custodian, Mr. Rivera, gave her a kind smile as she passed. He had helped clean up the cafeteria mess yesterday, and Hannah made a mental note to thank him properly later. She made her way directly to Principal Warner's office, where she found him reviewing yesterday's incident report with Vice Principal Chun. Their conversation halted abruptly when she appeared in the doorway, her presence more commanding than either administrator had ever witnessed from the famously reticent student. "Hannah," Principal Warner began, awkwardly adjusting his tie. "We were just discussing additional consequences for yesterday's incident. Tyler's parents have been notified, and I'd like to address the school," Hannah interrupted, her voice steady despite the rapid beating of her heart. "During morning assembly. It's important." The administrators exchanged surprised glances, clearly unprepared for this request from a student who typically avoided speaking even when called upon in class. "I'm not sure that's the best approach," Vice Principal Chan said gently. "We don't want to create more discomfort for you, and public speaking can be intimidating even under normal circumstances." Hannah placed her box on the desk between them. "This isn't about my comfort," she replied with a newfound certainty. "It's about breaking a cycle. I've been silent for 3 years, and look where that's gotten me. I need 5 minutes during assembly." Something in her unwavering gaze convinced Principal Warner, who nodded slowly. "5 minutes," he agreed. "But I'll need to know generally what you plan to say." "I'm going to respond to what happened yesterday," Hannah said simply. "Not with anger or accusations, but with honesty. And then I'm going to give these letters to the people who need to read them." By the time the assembly bell rang, word had spread through Westlake's hallways that the quiet girl would be speaking. Students filed into the auditorium with unusual anticipation, speculating wildly about what Hannah Mitchell might possibly have to say. Tyler and his friends sat in the back row, their usual bravado diminished by detention slips and confiscated phones, yet still carrying an air of unconcerned superiority. Principal Warner's introduction was mercifully brief. "Yesterday, an incident occurred that violated our community standards," he stated firmly. "While the responsible parties have received appropriate consequences, one of our students has requested an opportunity to address the school community. I ask that you all extend the courtesy of respectful attention." Hannah approached the podium slowly, the box now cradled in one arm. The auditorium lights seemed impossibly bright. Hundreds of faces turned expectantly toward her, many seeing her clearly for the first time despite sharing hallways for years. She placed her free hand on the podium to steady herself, took a deep breath, and began to speak in a voice that carried surprisingly well for someone unaccustomed to using it. "Most of you know me as the quiet girl," she started, her words falling into a silence so complete it seemed the entire room was holding its breath. "Some of you don't know me at all, despite sitting next to me in classes since freshman year. A few of you know me only as a convenient target. Until yesterday, that's all I was to Tyler Jenkins and his friends. Someone they could humiliate for likes and views without considering I might be an actual person with feelings." Her eyes found Tyler in the back row, his expression unreadable from this distance. She didn't linger on him but swept her gaze across the entire auditorium. "I could stand here and tell you how it felt to have food dumped on me while people recorded it for entertainment. I could describe washing spaghetti sauce from my hair or trying to explain to my mom why her Christmas gift to me was ruined beyond repair. I could talk about reading all 278 comments on the video. Yes, I counted them, and recognizing names of people I thought might actually like me if they ever bothered to know me." A rustling discomfort moved through the audience as students shifted in their seats, many avoiding eye contact with the stage or each other. "But that's not why I'm here," Hannah continued, opening the decorative box to reveal dozens of sealed envelopes. "I'm here because after 3 years of silence, I've realized that my voice might be the only thing that can break this cycle. Inside this box are letters. One for each person who has bullied me, ignored me when I needed help, or stood by watching without saying a word." She lifted the first envelope, holding it up for all to see. "These aren't hate letters," she clarified, her voice softening. "They're thank you notes, for teaching me that I'm stronger than I knew, and for showing me exactly the kind of person I never want to become." A confused murmur rippled through the auditorium as Hannah stepped away from the podium, box in hand, and began walking down the center aisle. She stopped first at Eliza's seat, extending an envelope with her name written in careful script. "You sit next to me in AP Literature and borrow my notes, but you liked the video of me covered in food," Hannah said quietly, though in the silent auditorium, her words carried clearly. "In this letter, I've written about how much I admired your essay on The Great Gatsby, and why I think you have the potential to be a writer someday. I hope you'll use your words more carefully in the future." Eliza accepted the envelope with trembling hands, her cheeks flushing with shame as several classmates turned to stare at her. Hannah moved on without waiting for a response, stopping next at Marcus's seat. "You filmed the incident and edited out the parts that would have shown it wasn't just a harmless prank," she said, offering him his letter. "In here, I've written about how your short film won the district competition last year, and how I thought you might use your talent to tell stories that lift people up instead of tearing them down." One by one, Hannah delivered her letters, each accompanied by a brief but powerful statement that acknowledged both the hurt caused and the potential she still saw in each recipient. Some students accepted their envelopes with visible remorse, others with defensive postures, but none refused. The atmosphere in the auditorium transformed with each delivery, discomfort giving way to a heavy, collective recognition of complicity. When Hannah finally reached Tyler, only a few envelopes remained in her box. The school's social hierarchy seemed suddenly irrelevant as she stood before him, no longer a nameless target but a person demanding acknowledgement. "Your letter was the hardest to write," she told him, her voice steady despite standing before her primary tormentor. "Not because I couldn't think of what to say, but because I had too much. In the end, I wrote about your little brother who thinks you're a hero. I wrote about the time in 7th grade when you helped that new kid who was being picked on, before you decided it was cooler to be the one doing the picking. I wrote about the person I think you could still choose to be." Tyler reached for the envelope with uncharacteristic hesitation, his usual confidence shattered by this quiet revolution happening before the entire school. "Hannah, he began, but she had already moved on to Amber, unwilling to make this moment about accepting apologies or granting easy absolution. When the last letter had been delivered, Hannah returned to the stage, the empty box still in her hands. Principal Warner stood to the side, visibly moved, any prepared intervention forgotten in the wake of what they were all witnessing. "I've been the quiet girl for so long that I forgot my own voice matters," Hannah said, addressing the silent auditorium one final time. "I'm not going to be that girl anymore." And maybe, her voice caught slightly before strengthening again, "maybe after reading these letters, some of you will choose to be different too." She stepped away from the podium, the empty box now a symbol of burdens released rather than carried. As Hannah walked off the stage, the first tear-filled, "I'm sorry," broke the silence, followed by another and another. A chorus of recognition rippling through the auditorium as students began opening their letters. Miss Patel, the school counselor, met Hannah at the side exit, wordlessly offering a tissue and a supportive hand on her shoulder. "That," Miss Patel said quietly, "was the bravest thing I've ever seen in 20 years of school counseling." Hannah smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes for the first time in longer than she could remember. "It wasn't about bravery," she replied. "It was about finally understanding that my silence wasn't protecting me. It was burying me." By lunch period, the social landscape of Westlake High had shifted in ways both subtle and profound. Hannah entered the cafeteria to find her usual corner table occupied by a group of freshmen. But before she could retreat to find another solitary spot, Eliza waved her over to a table near the windows. "We saved you a seat," she said, her letter visible in her pocket, its edges already worn from multiple readings. "If you want it." Hannah hesitated only briefly before joining them, setting down her tray beside people who were seeing her, truly seeing her, for the first time. Across the cafeteria, Tyler sat with a noticeably subdued group, his letter unfolded beside his untouched lunch. Their eyes met briefly across the room, and he nodded once. Not friendship or forgiveness, but acknowledgement. A beginning, perhaps, of something like respect. The quiet girl was gone, and in her place sat Hannah Mitchell. Still thoughtful, still more observer than performer, but now undeniably, irrevocably heard.